Good morning. Today is the first day of fall, but we're also turning to a new chapter in the church because it's the first Sunday of the Gospel of Luke. So now we're starting this period in the liturgical year where the Gospel readings over here are coming from the Gospel of Luke. And so this is early on in Jesus' ministry, and he's talking to the apostles and he tells them to let down their nets. So this is what they did for a living, and they had been doing this and hadn't caught anything. So from their experience and expertise, they knew they shouldn't expect to catch anything. But they did it anyway because Jesus asked them to do it. And then they're rewarded with this catch of fish. So this is an example where Jesus is telling people to do something, and they do it right away, and good things happen because of that. And this is a little bit different from something we heard yesterday, which also involved fish, which was the prophet Jonah. And so there's a real strong contrast here because with the prophet Jonah, God told Jonah to go to the people of Nineveh and to preach to them so that they could repent and be saved. And it says then, so Jonah went to Joppa to get a boat to Tarshish. So it's essentially saying God told him to go east, so he went and got a boat to go west. And this contrast is made intentionally in the book. It's trying to show you how directly sometimes we go against what we know to be right and what God's telling us to do. So God's telling him to go to the people of Nineveh and preach to them so they can repent. So we say, okay, so why does Jonah do this? Why does he do the exact opposite of what God's telling him to do? And it's because the people of Nineveh had been evil, and Jonah was ready to see them destroyed. So he had been preaching destruction, that if you don't repent, you're going to be destroyed. And now he was ready for it to happen. And God is trying to give these people another chance. And Jonah doesn't want that. So he's not going to go to them and preach. Instead, he's just going to go in the opposite direction and try to avoid that. And so that's what we do sometimes. We know what the right thing is, but we're doing everything that we can to avoid it and try to seek our own will in a situation. So then he goes and he gets on this boat, and the waves start getting rough, and things are not looking good. And so the sailors on there, they start casting lots, which is basically they're throwing dice, to try to figure out whose fault is it that this is happening. And they land on Jonah, so they confront him, and they say, it seems to be that you're the reason why this is happening. And he doesn't deny it, and he's saying, yes, I believe in one God, and my God told me to do something, and I didn't do it. And so this situation is not going to get better until you throw me overboard. So they're throwing things off of the boat, they're trying to lighten the load, and then eventually they give up and they realize, as he said, nothing is working, and it's going to have to be him that goes. So they throw him over, the seas calm down, and then that's when, as we know, Jonah is eaten by a fish. The original text says a great fish, Dag Gadol in Hebrew. And so we don't know exactly what that means because fish was really kind of for anything in the ocean. It was a broad term. So some sea creature, as it's translated in the Greek Septuagint, a sea monster comes and eats him. And so he's down there. Now he's at the bottom of the sea in the belly of this beast. And so we can see things have continued to get worse for Jonah. So he's disobeying God. He knows what he needs to do. He's doing the opposite. And things are getting worse and worse. So now he's kind of reached rock bottom. And now he starts to pray to God. And then God delivers him. So he's gotten himself into a bad situation. Then he turns back to God and he's praying. And God saves him from that situation. So now Jonah gives up and he does go to Nineveh. And he starts preaching, and the people then repent. So he's telling them, if you don't repent now, kind of last call, this is your last chance. If you don't do it now, you're going to be destroyed. And the people do. So everyone repents, everything's good, people are celebrating. But not Jonah. He's not celebrating now. He's very unhappy to see that the people did repent. So he goes out, and he's laying in the desert, and he's just being blistered by the sun. So he's moping, and he's wallowing in self-pity that he didn't get what he wanted out of this situation because the people did repent, and now they have a good relationship with God. So then God causes a plant to grow, and the plant comes and it provides shade for Jonah. And then he's happy because there's this situation where he's been given relief from his suffering, and then after only one day the plant dies. And then he's very upset again. He's upset about the plant dying. And then God comes to him and is telling him, you're not worried about the thousands of people that have been saved. You've got no concern for all these thousands of people, but you're moping over a plant that came and went in a day. How much more should I be concerned for all of these people, all of their salvation? And so the story is telling us something about the human experience that usually, not always, but usually we know what the right thing is to do. So sometimes it can be confusing and there's gray areas, but more often than not, we know what the right thing is, and sometimes we just choose not to do it. And this could be what we feel called to do in our lives. For me personally, I was, I felt some call to the priesthood, but I was doing other things for a while. And a couple of years that led up to me going to seminary, I had two situations where someone ran through an intersection and totaled my car. I got cut at one point, almost bled to death. So things were not going well as I was not going to seminary. And then I went to seminary and things started to get better, right? And so there's something to that when we're resisting God's will and we're not doing what we feel like we need to do, things don't go well. So as we saw with the apostles, he told them to put down the net. They put down the net, they get the fish. With Jonah, he tells them to go somewhere, he does the opposite, things get bad. So sometimes the bad things that happen in our life that's God trying to correct us and get us back on the path onto where we need to be. But then there's something else there too with this idea of the plant, that we can get caught up in these trivial things that are immediate to our own life, and we lose sight of the bigger picture sometimes. So we're not worried about the things that are affecting a lot of people around us necessarily. We're more worried about what's affecting our immediate situation. And so it's a reminder to kind of step back and try to see the bigger picture and make sure that we're doing what's right for everyone. But also, even more so, our inward disposition, our state of how we do that. So Jonah, he eventually does the right thing, but he does it very begrudgingly. He's very angry about it, to the point that he's ready, tells God he's ready to die, and he just wants to lay there in the desert and die. And so we need to also make sure that as we're doing the right thing, we try to develop a happy heart for the people around us, that we see people who have done us wrong and then good things happen to them. We try to be happy for them. We see people repent and kind of turn their life around and things start going well for them. We should be happy for those people and not, like Jonah, kind of waiting for judgment or waiting for consequences to fall on people around us. So we're praying for our enemies and we're hoping for the best for them, and we try to develop a disposition where we do that in a genuine way so that we're really happy when we see good things happen to people after maybe there's been something there in the past that's caused resentment or whatever it is. So as we're thinking about this today, both in today's gospel and then yesterday's saint that we commemorated, Saint Jonah, this contrast that's there, doing the right thing or not, doing it willingly or doing it begrudgingly, and how these two stories kind of illustrate how that plays out in our life and how that impacts our relationship with God and the kind of consequences that we have in our life. So hopefully, just a reminder for all of us to look at the situations we have in our life and say, in what ways am I charging forward with the things that I should be doing? And maybe what are some ways that I could say, oh, there's maybe an area for improvement here, whether it's the things that I'm doing or the attitude I'm doing it with, because that affects all of us in the clergy, the laity, in the church, or whatever we're doing at work or in our home lives. There are always those different ways that we have to improve. And so I hope that between the prophet Jonah and the apostles we have today, all of us can think about whether we're being a little bit more like Jonah or a little bit more like the apostles. Oh, si tu brazo, su